Deep cervical fascia or fascia coli. The deep cervical fascia is clinically very important structure of the neck because it forms various facial spaces in the neck, provides capsules to some glands like parotid and submandibular glands, also invests muscles into this region. It forms protective sheath around neurovascular structures present in the neck. Now the layers of this deep cervical fascia forms facial planes to direct the spread of infection or pus in the neck. This deep cervical fascia is made up of three layers. The outermost investing layer of deep cervical fascia, then pretracheal fascia and the innermost prevertebral fascia. The spaces between the structures of the neck are filled up with the loose areolar tissue, and the structures of the neck mostly move up and down. And the layers of the deep cervical fascia which are produced due to these movements of the structures are nothing but the laminar condensation of this loose areolar tissue. And this laminar condensation of loose areolar tissues take different names in different regions. And they are continuous with each other directly or indirectly through loose areolar tissue. This laminae ensheath muscles and other moving structures of the neck, which permits movements between the sheaths and movements of structures within them. So this is the transverse section through the neck. You can see the three layers of this deep cervical fascia. First one is the investing layer, then second is pretracheal layer, and the innermost is the prevertebral layer. And you can see the structures encircled by them. The first layer of the deep cervical fascia, which is the investing layer, it encircles the neck like a collar. It is deep to platysma and it is present deep to platysma and superficial fascia. It encloses two major superficial muscles like sternocleidomastoid and trapezius. In this figure, you can see the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle. They are enclosed by this investing layer of deep cervical fascia. Now the attachments of this investing layer of deep cervical fascia. So superiorly it is attached to external occipital protuberance, then superior knuckle line, mastoid process and the lower border of mandible. They are from behind forwards. Inferiorly it is attached to spine of scapula, the acromion process, clavicle and jugular notch of manubrium sterni. It is also from behind forwards. Anteriorly it is attached to symphysis menti, hyoid bone, jugular notch. Above downwards, and posteriorly it is attached to ligamentum nuchae and spine of 7 cervical vertebrae.
Now the tracing of the investing layer. Vertical tracing. Vertical tracing encloses two glands, submandibular gland and parotid gland, and two spaces, supraclavicular space and suprasternal space. Submandibular gland. Above the hyoid bone, it splits into the two. Superficial layer covers the superficial surface of gland and attached to the lower border of mandible, and deep layer covers the medial surface of the gland and attached to the mylohyoid line of the mandible. Now the parotid gland. Posterior to the submandibular gland, at the lower pole of parotid gland, it splits into two to enclose this gland. Superficial layer strong and covers the superficial surface of parotid gland as paretidomesenteric fascia and attached to the lower border of the zygomatic arch. Deep layer passes to the deep layer of parotid gland and attached to the lower border of the tympanic plate and the styloid process of the temporal bone. Part of this layer stretching between the styloid process and the angle of mandible called stylomandibular ligament, parietomesenteric fascia, and stylomandibular ligament forms the capsule of the parotid gland. Now the spaces. Suprasternal space. Suprasternal space is also called as the suprasternal space of the buns. Above the suprasternal notch, it splits into two layers. Suprasternal space. Suprasternal space contains the a jugular venous arch, sternal head of the sternocleidomastoid, lymph node, and interclavicular ligament, and supraclavicular space. Above the middle third of clavicle, it split into the two layers. Supraclavicular space contains terminal part of the external jugular vein and supraclavicular nerves and vessels. Now the horizontal tracing from the backwards to forwards. Ligamentum from ligamentum nuchae splits to enclose trapezius, then forms the roofs of posterior triangle, then again splits to enclose sternocleidomastoid, and finally forms the roof of the anterior triangle. Now we go through the 3D model of the deep cervical fascia. Superiorly, it is attached to external occipital protuberance, superior nuchal line, mastoid process, and the lower border of the mandible. Inferiorly, it is attached to the spinous process of the scapula, acromion, and the upper aspect of the clavicle and the manubriosterni. Now anteriorly. Anteriorly, it is attached to the symphysis menti, pass across through hyoid bone, and attached to the manubriosterni at the jugular notch. Now posteriorly. Posteriorly, it starts from the ligamentum nuchae and goes downwards and attached to the spine of the 7th cervical vertebrae.
This layer of deep cervical fascia covers the front sides of the trachea, hence its name pretracheal fascia. It splits to enclose the thyroid gland, forming its capsule, and is attached to the oblique line of thyroid cartilage and to the arch of cricoid cartilage anteriorly. Fascia to the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilages allow the thyroid gland to move up and down with larynx during the swallowing. The layers of the pretracheal fascia, which cover the posterior surface of the thyroid lobe, is ill-defined. As a result, enlarged thyroid goiter is easily bulges posteriorly to compress the esophagus during diaphasia. The pretracheal fascia provides slippery surface to allow the free movements of trachea. This is the model of pretracheal fascia. The green parts represent the pretracheal fascia. Parts of this are hyoid bone, thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, thyroid gland, trachea, and pericardium. The layer of deep cervical fascia covers the front side and the lateral sides, therefore its name pretracheal fascia. It encloses the thyroid gland, forming its capsule, and is attached to the oblique line of thyroid cartilage and to the arch of cricoid cartilage. Ligament of Berry. It is derived from the pretracheal fascia and connects the capsule of lateral lobe of thyroid gland to the cricoid cartilage. Now, the tracing of the pretracheal fascia. Horizontally, it encloses SCM, and in the anterior, the carotid sheath. Vertical extension from the above, it is the hyoid bone, and below it is the thorax and fibrous pericardium at its apex. Now, this is the vertical deposition of pretracheal fascia enclosing the thyroid gland.
Prevertebral fascia. It is extremely strong and lies in front of the prevertebral muscles. So when traced laterally, it covers scalenus anterior, scalenus medius, levator scapulae and splenius capitis, these four muscles. So this forms the facial carpet or the floor of the posterior triangle. Also lies deep to it are the roots of cervical spinal nerve, which then forms the brachial and cervical plexus. Now between the scalenus anterior and scalenus medius runs the brachial plexus, which continues down the axilla up to the elbow, and it also is covered by axillary sheath. In this diagram we can see the scalenus anterior muscle is reflected, so and we can see the brachial plexus, and scalenus medius is also seen. So the prevertebral fascia continues as axillary sheath in the axilla up to the elbow. It carries brachial plexus and axillary artery. The axillary vein lies outside the axillary sheath. Now, vertical tracing. It is attached above to the base of skull, that is the body of sphenoid, and then it splits into two. The anterior portion is known as alar fascia and the posterior portion is known as prevertebral fascia. The prevertebral fascia runs in front of the longus colli muscles down, and then it blends with the anterior longitudinal ligament at the level of T3 T4 vertebra. Now, the retropharyngeal space. The space between the prevertebral fascia and the posterior part of pharynx is known as retropharyngeal space. This is the posterior part of pharynx, and this is the buccopharyngeal fascia. Now, this space gives the pharynx area to expand during swallowing. Also, it has got retropharyngeal lymph nodes. Now, this retropharyngeal space is divided into two lateral compartments by the means of this fibrous midline raphe, and these two lateral compartments are known as spaces of Gillette's. Also, the space between the prevertebral fascia and the body of vertebra is known as prevertebral space.
Other derivatives of the deep cervical fascia. This includes carotid sheath and buccopharyngeal fascia. Carotid sheath, it is the tubular condensation of deep cervical fascia around the common carotid artery, internal carotid artery, vagus nerve, and internal jugular vein. The vagus nerve lies posteriorly between the vein and arteries. The carotid sheath is wedged between the three layers of the deep cervical fascia, that is investing layer, pretracheal fascia, and prevertebral fascia, and attaches to all these layers by loose areolar tissue. The sheath is thick around the common and internal carotid arteries but thin over the internal jugular vein in order to allow to expansion during increased venous return. Carotid sheath extends from the base of the skull above to the arch of aorta below. At the base of the skull, it is attached to the margins of the carotid canal and jugular fossa. At the arch of the aorta, it blends with the tunica adventitia. Now, contents of the carotid sheath, that is common and internal carotid arteries, vagus nerve, some deep cervical lymph nodes, carotid sinus nerve, sympathetic nerve fibers, carotid plexus, and internal jugular vein. Now, relation of carotid sheath. The ansa cervicalis is embedded in the anterior wall of carotid sheath. The cervical sympathetic chain is closely related to posterior wall of the sheath and plastered to the prevertebral fascia. Now, second one is the buccopharyngeal fascia, that is delicate and distensible layer of the fascia that is covers a muscle of pharynx. The superior constrictor on its outer aspect, and superiorly it is reaches to the outer aspect of the muscle buccinator, extends from the base of the skull to the esophagus. The important note is, together with the similar layer of fascia on the internal surface of the constrictor muscles, the pharyngobasilar fascia closes to the gaps in the muscular wall of the pharynx.
Come to the clinical correlations of deep cervical fascia. As you all know, deep cervical fascia has 3 layers: investing layer, pretracheal layer, and prevertebral layer. So the clinical correlations of pretracheal fascia: the attachment of pretracheal fascia to hyoid bone, thyroid cartilage, and cricoid cartilage allows the thyroid gland to move up and down with the larynx during swallowing. In this figure, you can see the thyroid gland, which is covered by pretracheal fascia, and here is the attachment to hyoid bone, thyroid cartilage, and cricoid cartilage. Because of these 3 attachment, thyroid gland can move up and down with the larynx during swallowing. Second is the layer of pretracheal fascia, which cover the posterior surface of the thyroid lobe, is ill-defined, and as a result, enlarged thyroid easily bulge posteriorly to compress the esophagus, causing dysphagia. So, posterior part of thyroid lobe is ill-defined by the pretracheal fascia. Because of this, when goiter occurs, thyroid gland become enlarged. It can easily bulge in the posterior part and compress the esophagus. So it caused dysphagia. The pretracheal fascia provides a slippery surface to allow free movement of trachea during swallowing. When swelling occurs because of this slippery surface of pretracheal fascia, trachea can easily move. Now, second is clinical correlations of prevertebral fascia. The infection of retropharyngeal space can pass down behind the esophagus and may extend into the posterior mediastinum through superior mediastinum. In this figure, this is the retropharyngeal space. So, infection of retropharyngeal space can pass down behind the esophagus, may extend into the posterior mediastinum through superior mediastinum. Now, the retropharyngeal abscess due to involvement of retropharyngeal lymph nodes produce paramedian unilateral bulge in the posterior pharyngeal wall due to fusion of buccopharyngeal fascia to prevent to the prevertebral fascia in the median plane. So, this is the retropharyngeal space, as I told. So, abscess of this is occurred due to involvement of retropharyngeal lymph node, and it produces the paramedian unilateral bulge in the posterior pharyngeal wall due to this fusion of this prevertebral fascia and buccopharyngeal fascia. Now, third is tubercular caries of cervical vertebrae produce abscess in the prevertebral space, which often extend into the retropharyngeal space. So this is the cervical vertebrae. Caries of this can, and this is the prevertebral space, and this is the retropharyngeal space, as I already told. So caries of cervical vertebrae, it can cause abscess in prevertebral space. So यहाँ पे abscess होगा तो यहाँ पे extend करेगा और retropharyngeal space में भी abscess हो जाएगा. The pus collected in the prevertebral space due to caries of cervical vertebrae may travel forward and cause midline bulge in the posterior pharyngeal wall. So this is the cervical vertebrae and this is the posterior pharyngeal wall. अगर यहाँ पे pus होगा तो वो इसकी वजह से यहाँ पे ट्रैवल कर जाएगा, जो फ्यूजन हुआ है यहाँ पे. So pus travel easily can travel from the cervical vertebrae to the posterior pharyngeal wall. Pus may travel laterally, first in the posterior triangle deep to the facial carpet formed by prevertebral fascia, then along with the axillary sheath into the axilla or even into the arm. यहाँ पे pus है, so we know that के posterior triangle का जो fascia है, जो फेशियल कार्पेट है, वो प्रीवर्टिबल फेशिया से बनता है. सो यहाँ पे जो प्रीवर्टिबल फेशिया है उसके थ्रू सर्वाइकल वर्टिब्रे से जो पस है वो ट्रैवल कर जाएगा पोस्टीरियर ट्रायंगल में, और वहाँ से अलॉन्ग विद द एक्सिलरी शीथ इट कैन आल्सो ट्रैवल इन टू द एक्सिला एंड इवन इन टू द आर्म. So now other clinical correlations, the malignant and tuberculosis deep cervical lymph nodes frequently become adherent to the internal jugular vein. Therefore, during block dissection of the neck, the sheath is exposed in the portion of the vessels is resected to facilitate removal of this lymph node. अगर malignant और tuberculosis malignant and tuberculosis deep cervical lymph nodes वो इंटरनल जुगुलर वेन के साथ एडरेंट हो जाएगा, जुड़ जाएगा। तो अगर जब ब्लॉक डिसेक्शन होगा तो नेक के पास जो इंटरनल जुगुलर वेन का जो पार्ट है जहाँ पे वो लिम्फ नोड एडहेरेंट है उसको रिमूव कर देंगे उसके साथ, डिसेक्शन के साथ। So that is all about the clinical correlations of deep cervical fascia.